Hello there, my name is natekokernot and welcome to my channel. I want to thank everyone who has liked or subscribed to this channel, as well as to thank you for all the comments. I've recently been challenging one of our most basic assumptions. It's perhaps the next assumption to fall after the two that came before. Firstly, that the earth was flat as a pancake, and second, that the earth was the center of the universe. Both of these prior assumptions were based solely on our intuitive interpretations of what our eyes are telling us. But it turned out in both of those cases that our eyes were indeed deceiving us. This new shift is about that. Our eyes are not telling us the truth about the happenings of the world around us. I've shown you the scientific breakthroughs that support this newest shift in paradigms. You just have to click on the channel itself and go to playlists and then to the perception playlist, and you will find all those videos there. Now I'm going to shift to the spiritual story of A Course in Miracles and describe the events that have transpired that led us on this wild goose chase that we're currently involved in, chasing some permanent joy through attaining things in this world. It's hard to picture a world without time, but try your best. Imagine that we are, have always been, and will always be in a place called heaven, where the unconditional love of our Creator shines changelessly on all of us, and that we, as part of that creation, have been given all the power of our Creator to co-create with Him. Instead of thinking of all of us as the greater community of which we are a part, try to think of all of us as the sole identity of who we are. We are not individuals so much as we are the collective consciousness. I'll call this the one child of God. It is who we are in truth. But into the mind of this one child of God came a tiny mad idea. What would it be like to be separate from all of this? It's important now that I explain the true nature of God as ACIM tells us about Him. One thing God is not is a tyrant. Unlike the God depicted mostly in the Old Testament, this God does not intervene in this world and does not ask for anything in return for His love. But because He's not a tyrant, He gave us free will to think for ourselves. So the story continues, that in this moment, that the one child of God entertained this thought of what it would be like to be separate from everything, this world emerged in that same instant as a dream or fantasy fulfilled of what that would be like. I said before that God does not intervene in this world, but He did intervene in that same instant by placing in all of these newly separated minds the memory of our true identity, the one child of God. The quiet voice that remembers is called the Holy Spirit. The part of our minds that split off from this wholeness, or that doesn't remember because it's fantasizing of something else, is called the ego. The ego carried on with its project of finding some permanent joy by attaining more of everything. God and the Holy Spirit both know that more than everything is a contradiction in terms, but the ego could not let itself see this logic because if it accepts that the mission it is on is impossible, that would interfere with the mission. The most important thing I want you all to take away from this story is that in reality, in truth, the separation never occurred. It was against God's will, so it simply wasn't possible. God and the Holy Spirit both realize this, but the ego has been pressing on with its plan for salvation and sticking its fingers in its ears, singing, "La la la, I'm not listening," the entire time that we've been here. But sometimes the ego itself second-guesses itself. Its beliefs are not so stable as it thought it would. It sometimes entertains thoughts of guilt, and the guilt comes from questioning whether that choice it made to go it alone was really an attempt to harness the power of God and to use that power to deny God's will. The ego, when it lets this thought slip into our psyches, it doesn't see it as a small mistake, but rather as a sin punishable only by death. This is how this guilt transformed into fear. So first, we wished that we could separate, and then we became utterly convinced that we had accomplished this impossible feat. And now we feel guilty for having separated, and now we fear the consequences of our perhaps terrible decision. Many people ask the question at this point, why did the one child of God have this foolish thought in the first place? And that's a fair question, but not the most pertinent question to set you on the path to healing from the separation. The more pertinent question one could ask themselves is, why do I continue to propagate the same story right now? Or what's it actually getting me? You see, the ego's mantra is seek but do not find. It's like a carrot dangling out on a string from a stick above our heads, just out of reach from us. We are chasing joy and never quite grasping it because the ego designed it just this way. It wants only for us to be convinced that someday we'll catch up to it and then we'll die in the process. The ego is not our friend, it's our tormentor. But we can give all of this up in a flash by accepting the truth about ourselves, or by accepting the atonement, which in ACIM is broken into 3 parts, at 1 mint. All the guilt and fear would vanish in an instant if we accepted with every fiber of our being that we did not accomplish this impossible feat that we think we accomplished. We are still the one child of God. There is nothing wrong. There are no problems, despite appearances to the contrary. In my last video, I talked about perception being synonymous with projection. It's the guilt that we all unconsciously feel in our unconscious minds that we project. Remember that we have the power to create with our thoughts just as our Father created us with his thought. While the figures that populate our world of perception are our creations, and we have misused this power by projecting all of our unconscious guilt onto our creations. Now, as the ego figures it, we are innocent by virtue of our brothers' and sisters' guilt. But we didn't think it through. We didn't think about the side effects of that decision. Now, with all the potential evil projected onto others, we live in fear of their agendas, certain that these evil ones are here to undo us. Of course, if we remember that these figures are just projections of our guilty minds, we can laugh the whole problem away. Here's the passage from ACIM that basically describes our Genesis moment, or our Big Bang. Quote, "Into eternity, where all is one, there crept a tiny, mad idea, at which the Son of God remembered not to laugh. In his forgetting did the thought become a serious idea, and possible of both accomplishment and real effects. The instant that the madness of the cause is recognized, it can have no effects. Together we can laugh them both away and understand that time cannot intrude upon eternity." End quote. But please recall, there is a part of you that has not forgotten. It is just a much quieter voice than the ego's voice. Why, you might ask, is the ego's voice so loud while the Holy Spirit's voice is only a whisper that can be heard only in the stillness of a mind that is empty of thoughts? Well, because the Holy Spirit has truth on its side, and truth doesn't need defending to be truth. The truth is true despite all appearances to the contrary. The ego is the only part of the split mind that doubts, so sometimes in its self-doubt and uncertainty, it panics and it yells. It gets very upset and very loud and very desperate, seeing that it doesn't have a strong case. Like a lawyer who knows he's losing his case, the ego reacts with all sorts of desperate maneuvers, including raising its voice. While the Holy Spirit knows that when this trial is resolved, things will be perfectly fine in reality, in heaven, as they have always been. So back to perception and projection. We are essentially projecting the lie that we are telling ourselves onto all of our creations and suffering terribly from the resulting experience that we've ourselves manifested. If this is true, then there's a really simple off-ramp from all the suffering, and that is to accept that our projections are projections and begin to see, and that is to accept our perceptions as projections and begin to see past them to the truth of what we really are. Still one. Thanks for staying with me again today. I think that just one more video should be required to convince you all that our perceptions are not our true reality. It's very good news once you understand it fully. We have nothing to fear and nothing to feel guilty for. Have a beautiful day filled with blessings, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.